Caring Review Print Speaking to the Blind, celebrating 40 years of audio newspaper production. Welcome to this week's edition of the Glasgow Times podcast, recorded at the Bishop Briggs Media Centre by our amazing volunteers. You can get in touch with us via Facebook, Twitter or Instagram using @QandReview. That is @CUEANDREVIEW. You can also contact us directly by emailing information@QandReview.com. That is INFORMATION@CUEANDREVIEW.com, or by calling 0141 772 3976. That's 0141 772 3976.
From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 16th of February, from the news section, charity slapped with £179,000 redundancy bill. This article is an exclusive by Marissa McWhirter. The closure of a Lifeline Women's Service has caused 18 workers to lose their jobs and left a charity facing tens of thousands in redundancy costs. Turning Point 218 was forced to close its doors on Wednesday after the council realised an unworkable budget of £650,000 last year. Now, the Glasgow Times can reveal that the closure has cost 18 people their jobs. Turning Point Scotland, TPS, has been slapped with a £179,325 redundancy bill. The service, which helped female offenders get back on their feet, employed 32 workers. In light of the closure, 5 resigned, 8 took alternative posts and 18 were made redundant. New positions in TPS were found for 9 members of staff. Linda Pollitt-Wilson, Unite Industrial Officer, said, "Unite is deeply saddened that the vitally important 218 service for women has been put on the scrap heap by Glasgow City Council with no intervention or care from the Scottish Government. 18 people have lost their livelihoods due to the closure, and we fear women who used the residential service will now be pushed into custody and be trapped within the justice system." A spokesperson for Glasgow's Health and Social Care Partnership, HSCP, said that while they recognised there would be anxiety, Turning Point Scotland, TPS, was responsible for the employees. Kenny Crawford, Director of Finances and Resources at TPS, said all 32 members of staff within 218 service were supported alongside Unite the Union through consultation to identify suitable options for redeployment to enable the organisation to retain the knowledge, skills and experience of valuable staff members. Fortunately, 9 members of staff could be redeployed into suitable positions across Turning Point Scotland. However, despite all our efforts, we are disheartened to confirm that 5 members of staff resigned and 18 members of staff were made redundant. The redundancies resulting from the closure of 218 cost the Turning Point Scotland a total of £179,000. Turning Point Scotland are saddened by the loss of the service and the redundancies that resulted from it, as well as the outcome for vulnerable women trapped within the justice system. Linda said, "Many serious questions remain unanswered by Glasgow City Council and the Scottish Government on how this needless decision to withdraw funding was allowed to happen." A spokesperson for HSCP responded, "Equally, and again recognising the concern for the women they work with, 218 was not an alternative to custody. It worked with women in community orders, and the review wasn't able to evidence outcomes for women who had used the service, including further involvement in the justice system." And that article was an exclusive by Marissa McWhirter. From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 16th of February, from the news section, Glasgow City Council budget, parking charges and school meals to rise. This article is by Stuart Patterson. The price of a school meal, parking charges and Glasgow Life facilities are to rise to meet tens of millions of pounds of cuts they need to balance the council's budget. Meals in schools are to rise by 10p a day to £2.10 to raise £70,000 over the next 2 years. Charges for multi-storey car parks, pay and display parking and residence visitors parking will also go up to raise £3.5 million in the next year alone. and Glasgow Life will be expected to raise millions of pounds more in income. For car parking, the SNP budget includes raising around £2.5 million extra from on-street pay and display parking. It includes an extra £558,000 from the city centre and inner zone and £1.9 million from outer zones. And almost £500,000 is to be raised for multi-storey car parking. Over 3 years, it is planned to raise an extra £7.3 million from the on-street parking charges. A budget was passed after the SNP and Green groups reached a deal and voted for a budget with £107 million of saving over the next 3 years. There will be an increase in the bulk uplift charge from 2025 onwards to raise an extra £82,000. More than £500,000 will be saved from the city building apprenticeship funding to reflect current numbers and partnership arrangements within Wheatley Group. Council tax will remain the same as the SNP administration accepted the funding from the Scottish Government to fund a freeze with the cash set to compensate instead of a 5% rise. Proposing the budget, City Treasurer Richard Bell said that it was the hardest budget he's had to set. He added, "The salami slicing has to come to an end. There's almost nothing left to cut." He called for the ability to raise income from people coming to Glasgow through a visitor levy or tourist tax, congestion charging and workplace parking charges. He said it would hopefully raise additional income from those who come to our city who are not Glaswegians. Bell said, "The cost of living crisis has fallen on the shoulders of the most disadvantaged Glaswegians. They rely on the services we provide, which said were being hollowed out by austerity." The biggest package of cuts/savings comes in a service redesign and future income generation, saving more than £10 million in each of the next 3 years, totalling £31.3 million. The redesign package includes changes to waste management, the rollout of bin hubs, and education service reform. It states, "This combines several service redesign options which will either generate additional revenue or realise efficiency savings over the course of the 3-year budget period." It also sets up a project team to progress businesses' cases to utilise current and upcoming powers from the Scottish Government that have the potential to generate additional revenue for the city. Labour said the service redesign means there will be fewer teachers, which will affect attainment in schools. Jill Brown, presenting the Labour amendment, said all the parties' proposals would have an impact on education. The Labour budget proposal also put forward reform of education services, which totalled £31.9 million of savings over 3 years. Brown said, "There is no sugarcoating the drastic budget cuts that the SNP/Green Scottish Government have not only passed on to Glasgow City Council this year, but year on year for the last 10 years and more." She added, £107.7 million funding gap, when services are already decimated by years of cuts, is a mountain to climb. Let me be clear though, the precarious financial position of Scotland's local authorities, including Glasgow, lies squarely at the feet of the Scottish Government and of the SNP administration in this chamber, who accept the crumbs off the table of the SNP in Holyrood. Since 2017, when the SNP formed an administration, Glasgow City Council has had a £250 million of cuts to its budget. It is also envisaged that Glasgow Life will increase its income by £7.1 million over 3 years. And that article was by Stuart Patterson. From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 16th of February, from the news section, "Drugs and cash found in searches." This article is unattributed. Drugs and cash worth thousands have been found by police during searches. Officers say they stopped 3 vehicles during their shifts at the end of last week. The first was stopped and searched on Ardbeg Avenue in Rutherglen on Thursday, February the 8th. Cops then searched a motor in Broadwalk, East Kilbride, the following day. Finally, our third vehicle was searched on Eaglesham Road in East Kilbride. The force recovered cocaine and cannabis worth £1,600 and £5,500 in cash. They have arrested and charged 2 men, aged 19 and 23, in connection with alleged drug offences, and the report will be sent to the Procurator Fiscal. A third man, aged 30, has been reported to the Procurator Fiscal. and that article was unattributed. From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 16th of February, from the news section, 4 charged for slashing. This article is unattributed. 4 people, including 3 teenagers, have been charged after an alleged Glasgow slashing on bonfire night. 2 groups of youth reportedly began fighting and throwing fireworks at each other in the Corrywood Avenue area of Barmulloch. An alleged slashing took place and 1 person was hospitalised. At the Springburn and Barmulloch Area Partnership meeting this week, Police Scotland gave a verbal update on the investigation. Officers confirmed 4 people were arrested in connection with the alleged incident. The 2 boys, aged 16 and 17, and a 17-year-old girl were charged in connection with assault, and a 40-year-old woman was arrested and charged in connection with a serious assault. Inspector Colin McLucas confirmed they are developing a multi-agency plan to address youth disorder in the area. On the night, specialist teams were dispatched across the city to deal with unprecedented levels of violence and disorder. The article is unattributed. From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 16th of February, from the news section, murder suspect insists he is an innocent man. Report by Grant McCabe. The suspect accused of murdering Emma Caldwell told jurors he is an innocent man and insisted, "I'm sitting here for something I have not done." Ian Packer was in the witness box for a 3rd day of questioning at his trial in the High Court in Glasgow. The 51-year-old faces a total of 36 charges of physical and sexual violence involving 25 women, including the murder of Miss Caldwell at Limefield Woods in Biggar, South Lanarkshire, on April the 5th, 2005. Packer earlier said in his evidence that he had been the victim of lies made against him by all the females. But prosecutor Richard Goddard KC yesterday suggested it was Packer who had changed his story 7 times. Packer said, "It is a scary thing for police to interview you for something that you have not done." Mr. Goddard replied, "I'd imagine it is a whole lot more scary if you had done it." Packer said, "It would be, but I have not done it." The Advocate Deputy went on to refer to parts of the prosecution case against Packer. This included evidence of a 97% match to soil in Packer's van coming from close to where Miss Caldwell's naked body was discovered on May the 8th, 2005. Packer said he could not explain that as he was not a scientist. He again admitted he had been to the woods with sex workers, but had only been to the area where the body was found during the site visit in this trial. Packer said, "I cannot admit to something that I have not done." In response to another question, he also stated, "How do you think I feel being an innocent man sitting here for something that I have not done?" Mr. Goddard went on to put to him, "Mr. Packer, we are way beyond bad luck and coincidences. The reality is that if you look at all the evidence knitted together, the reason you have the soil in the van is because you took Emma Caldwell to your particular, peculiar and highly random place. You strangled her, as you have others. You left her there and took her possessions." He replied, "No, I did not." Packer was earlier asked about the cable found around Miss Caldwell's neck. A woman who knew Packer previously told the report it looked similar to the type of sign fitter the sign fitter had in the back of his van. However, he said she was mistaken and that he used a different kind of cable on his job. Evidence is now completed in the trial. Closing speeches will be beginning today. It will be next week before jurors retire to consider verdicts. And that article was by Grant McCabe. From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 16th of February, from the news section, Police in Street Alert. Report by Kirsty Feerick. Police swarm Broomhill Drive after finding suspicious items at a property during a planned search. The Glasgow Times attended the scene yesterday after the incident kicked off at around 12:30 p.m. We saw how worried bystanders watched as detectives evacuated the community and closed off the road while investigations continued. Meanwhile, cops were battered by rain as they stood protecting the police cordon for safety reasons. One concerned local said, Police have just taken over the full road and while they're tunneling through, something serious has happened. A second person said, "Nothing like this ever happens here, so it's scary seeing all these police. I really hope everyone is okay." Police refused any access to the road on Broomhill Drive and even redirected fire crews who attended the scene. It is unclear at this stage what suspicious items were found inside the property, which sparked the probe. It is understood that Glasgow City Council set up an emergency rest centre for evacuated residents. A spokesperson for Police Scotland said, "As a precaution, Broomhill Drive between Dumbarton Road and Broomhill Avenue in Glasgow is closed after suspicious items were found within a property following a planned search. Several homes have been evacuated and a cordon put in place. Please avoid the area at this time." A spokesperson for the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service said, "We were called to assist emergency services partners at 12:27 p.m. on Thursday at an incident in Broomhill Drive, Glasgow. Operations Control mobilised 2 fire appliances and specialist resources to the scene." A Glasgow City Council spokesperson said, "We have set up an emergency rest centre at Partick Borough Hall for anyone evacuated from their home as a result of this incident. We will continue to liaise with police and fire service and will respond to any developments appropriately." And that article was by Kirsty Feary. From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 16th of February, from the news section, "Show under review after appalling actions." Article by Nicole Mitchell. A comedian's upcoming show in Glasgow is under review following allegations of appalling actions at a theatre in London. Paul Curry is due to perform his show Stum at the Stand Comedy Club on March 15th as part of the Glasgow International Comedy Festival. However, it is now being reviewed after an incident during his show at Soho Theatre on February the 10th. According to reports, Curry displayed a Palestinian flag and Ukrainian flag during the show before orchestrating a standing ovation at the end of the show. He is then said to have asked one man who remained in his seat, "Didn't you enjoy my show?" The 33-year-old man, Leahav Eitan, replied, "I enjoyed your show until you brought out a Palestinian flag." Curry reported demanding the man leave the theatre by repeatedly shouting, "Leave my F, asterisk expletive deleted, show now, get out now." Mr. Eitan, who's originally from Israel, told another news outlet, "The only way out was through the stage. We had to actually get on the stage quite close to him, and I was quite afraid he'd throw a punch because he was still cursing and shouting. He got out his Palestinian flag again and shouted, 'M, expletive deleted, you'll have to watch it again on your way out.'" Soho Theatre has since issued a statement stating Curry has been banned from performing any future shows at the theatre and said it will not tolerate intimidation of audience members. It said it has been speaking to audience members to establish what happened. The statement read, "Soho Theatre will not tolerate intimidation of audience members due to their nationality, race, religion and beliefs." On Saturday evening, following the end of Paul Curry's show Stum, Jewish members of the audience were subjected to verbal abuse and the performer aggressively demanded they leave the theatre. Such appalling actions are unacceptable and have no place on our stages, now or ever. We will not be inviting Paul Curry back to perform at our venue. Whilst we robustly support the right of artists to express a wide range of views in their shows, intimidation of audience members, acts of anti-Semitism or any other forms of racism will not be tolerated at Soho Theatre. A spokesperson for The Stand said, "We are reviewing the situation regarding the reported incident that took place at the end of a performance of Paul Curry, Stum, on February the 10th at Soho Theatre. We have no further comment while we try to establish the facts." And the article was by Nicole Mitchell. From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 16th of February, from the news section, "SNP in Holyrood is letting down city." Article by Stuart Patterson. Glasgow has been short-changed by the Scottish Government, according to Anna Sarwar. The MSP will be addressing the Scottish Labour Conference in Glasgow today and is expected to hit out at the budget cuts in the city. the SNP and Green councillors joined to pass a budget that sees £107 million shortfall over 3 years. Sarwar is expected to say, "Glasgow is a city where I am proud to be bringing up my children. This is a city that is brimming with potential, but, let's be honest, it has been badly mismanaged by the SNP. Yesterday, SNP and Green councillors in Glasgow agreed another round of cuts to their budget after being shortchanged yet again by their party colleagues in Holyrood. He said the pattern will be repeated across the country. Local government struggles with budget deficits." Sarwar will tell the conference, "And while Labour will continue to campaign with our trade union partners to win more funding from national government, I think it is important to recognise where the blame lies. Because I don't blame any councillor from any party who is forced to make cuts in their own communities. None of these councillors, whether they are Labour, SNP or any other party, chose to come into politics to oversee the managed decline of their towns or their cities. This has been forced on them by the SNP government in Edinburgh. Sarwar believes councils, like Glasgow, should be getting more money." He will tell the conference, "Scottish Labour remains committed to a fair funding deal for our local communities. It should be the case that when the Scottish Government's budget goes up, the budget for local communities goes up proportionately. That means fair funding for local councils, fair funding for our local communities, so that great cities like Glasgow and communities across Scotland can create more jobs, attract more investment and reach their full potential." The Scottish Labour leader will be speaking on day one of a 3-day conference at the SEC as Labour gets ready for a general election sometime this year. Sarwar will say, "It's time to end the centralisation in Holyrood, push power out into the hands of local communities. Because that's what change means, and that's why change matters." That article was written by Stuart Patterson. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 17th of February, from the news section. "I suffered a stroke at work, but quick-thinking colleagues saved my life." Article written by Kirsty Feerick. An NHS worker suffered a stroke at work, but her life was saved by quick-thinking colleagues. Caroline Swan was supposed to have a day off when she displayed symptoms at the Queen Elizabeth University Hospital on Friday, January the 26th. The healthcare support worker is based on a stroke rehabilitation ward, so one of her colleagues quickly recognised the signs and knew exactly what to do. Sharon Woods, charge nurse on Ward 56, was the one who spotted something wasn't right and said, "Caroline was just sitting in a chair and just staring." When I asked her if she was okay, she couldn't speak. There and then I knew. Calling ahead to make sure the emergency stroke team was ready, Sharon got Caroline onto her trolley and ran to A&E. Her quick thinking meant Caroline received the intervention she needed within 45 minutes. This meant within 2 hours Caroline's speech was beginning to return, and just days later she was feeling better. Now she is back home in Thornley Bank with her husband Alan, and planning to return to work so she can help others in their rehabilitation journey following a stroke. Caroline said, "Sharon saved my life. It's as simple as that. I was coming out of a room and I just couldn't get my glove off. I just kept staring at it and thinking something's wrong. I can vaguely remember being put in a trolley, going through corridors, and then going for a scan. I remember then thinking something was really wrong. It honestly feels like my stars were aligned that day. I wasn't even meant to be working, then Sharon found me really quickly and got me the help I needed. Because of her and the rest of the team who took care of me, I recovered really well. I've lost my sense of taste, and I need to wear a monitor, but I'm feeling well and hoping to be back at work soon. I'll never be able to thank them enough for what they did for me." Health services across the country are under considerable pressure, and staff are working hard in every way to give patients the best possible care. But seeing that care at first hand was something Caroline will always remember. "The care I received was just amazing," she said. "I thought it would be weird, given that I work with everyone and I knew them so well, but they were brilliant. They just treated me like any other patient and looked after me really well. Everyone was so nice and I felt so safe. I can't thank them enough. To remember the signs of stroke, all you need to do is say FAST. The FAST acronym, Face, arm, speech time is a test to quickly identify if someone is having a stroke. Face weakness, can the person smile? Arm weakness, can the person raise both arms? Speech problems, can the person speak clearly and understand what you say? Time to call 999 if you see any of these signs. And that report was by Kirsty Fayrick. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 17th of February, news. Basket Dash treat for lucky shopper. Article by Eva White. A surprised Drumchapel man couldn't believe his luck after he popped into the shops for milk and left with more than £60 worth of goodies for free thanks to Snappy Shopper. David Colligan had just finished an early shift and was nipping to the key store on Duntreath Avenue in Knightswood when he was invited to take part in a Basket Dash challenge. The Drumchapel resident was given 60 seconds to fill a basket with as many things as he possibly could, with all of it being paid for by Snappy Shopper. Alcohol and vapes were excluded from the deal. The Knightswood store is one of many across Scotland to appear in the delivery app service, which allows people to order groceries to be delivered to their homes. David managed to gather a full basket full of items, such as cakes, juice, crisps, toiletries, all whilst being cheered on by Ian Barclay, the Snappy Shopper rep. The total came to £63.39. He said, "I'm feeling thankful. I've only come in for milk for a cup of tea. It was good fun and I enjoyed it. I did feel slightly panicky running about, but my strategy was just to go for everything I wanted and get as much of it as I could. I had no idea that this would happen and I'm excited to go and start eating and drinking as much of it as I want." Shazia Sarwar, a sales assistant at the shop, added, "That was really fun. To be honest with you, this is the first time that we've done something like this, and it was so nice to see David so excited. I would love to do this again." The Glasgow Times will be teaming up with Snappy Shopper to give one lucky customer an opportunity to take part in a Basket Dash challenge in Rutherglen. We will be at the Cathkin convenience store in Skye Road on February the 22nd at 2 p.m. And if you're not available to be in with a chance of taking part, we will be running a promotion in the Glasgow Times on February the 21st. Snappy Shopper customers will be able to get £10 off an £11 shop. The home delivery service makes it super easy to get your groceries delivered to your door in as little as 30 minutes, all while supporting your local convenience store. That includes a full range of products including milk, eggs, bread and other daily essentials. It's all just a few taps away and ready to be delivered to your home in a snap. The app works with independent and franchise stores across the country, including Nisa, Spar Premier, One Stop and more. Download the app on the App Store or Google Play. And that piece was by Eva White. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 17th of February, from the news section. Cop speaks out after man found guilty of murder. This article is unattributed. A top cop is speaking out after a man was found guilty of the murder of his brother and partner in Coatbridge. Peter Duffy, 47, was convicted at the High Court in Glasgow on Friday, February the 16th for the murders of his brother John Paul Duffy and partner Emma Bailey at two separate addresses in the town. The body of John, 51, was found at a flat in Coat Street on Sunday, April the 10th, 2022, following a concern for a person called to the police. On Tuesday, April the 12th, the body of 26-year-old Emma was found in nearby Calder Street during the investigation into John's death. Following Duffy's conviction, Detective Inspector Campbell Jackson of Police Scotland's Major Investigation Team has thanked members of the public who helped with an investigation into the sustained and horrific attacks committed by Duffy. He said, "Our thoughts are very much with the families and friends of John Paul Duffy and Emma Bailey, and I hope that the court result brings them some kind of comfort. These were horrendous crimes and involved significant levels of violence in what amounted to sustained and horrific attacks. Attempts were made to conceal both bodies. In addition, Duffy used bank and debit cards owned by both the deceased and pretended to be his brother who was at the time already dead. I would like to thank all officers involved and members of the public who assisted with our investigation. Duffy took 2 lives showing complete disregard for both families, and now will face the consequences of his actions. Duffy will be sentenced at Edinburgh High Court on March the 15th. And that article was unattributed. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 17th of February, from the news section, ex-Old Firm youth star jailed for killing teen in hit and run. This article is by Connor Gordon. A former Old Firm youth player who killed a teenager in a drunken hit and run has been jailed for 6 years. Kieran Dixon, 22, struck Aidan Pilkington, 18, in Glasgow's Anniesland on September 11th, 2021. Dixon got behind the wheel after consuming a number of beers and cocktails with a friend. The ex-Celtic B player later raced down a road where Aidan was crossing and dragged him along the ground. Dixon, also a former Rangers youth star, then fled the scene and abandoned his rented Mercedes car close to his home. Aidan meantime suffered significant head injuries, which he succumbed to later in hospital. Dixon pleaded guilty at the High Court in Glasgow to causing death by dangerous driving. Judge Lord Colbeck said yesterday that the sentencing range for the offence was between 7 to 12 years. The judge stated that he would have sentenced Dixon for 8 years but for his plea of guilty. He added, "Nothing I can say or do can compensate for his death. After the sentence I have imposed has been served, you can move on with your life where there is an appalling loss from which his family and friends will have to endure." The measures and dignified victim impact statements describe movingly how Aidan was a much-loved friend, son and grandson. "I recognise you didn't intend to cause harm, but the quantity of alcohol and speed you travelled was someone who was clearly reckless to what harm was caused." The judge also cited the young person's sentencing guidelines for offenders under 25, which he had to take into account. Lord Colbeck said, "As a young person, you have a lower level of maturity with greater capability to change. Your behaviour suggests that you lacked maturity and unable to express good judgment in making decisions." Dixon was also disqualified from driving for 9 years, and he must sit the extended test before he can regain his licence. As he was led to the cells, Dixon stuck his thumb up to his family in the public gallery and said, "Love you, see you later." The court earlier heard that Dixon, now of Erskine, Renfrewshire, was employed by Celtic's B team at the time of the offence. He went to the restaurant Duck Bay Marina in Loch Lomond with a friend in the early evening. Dixon drank a pint of lager and a bottle of Corona before he drove to Q Club in Glasgow city centre. CCTV confirmed that Dixon drank a further 2 pints of lager before he drove to the Black Horse bar in the city's Summerson. Dixon consumed 3 pints of the strong cocktail Venom, which was also topped up with an extra measure of vodka. Aidan, who was to embark on his first year as a university student, was out with school friends at that night drinking alcohol and left the pub around 11:30 p.m. He was en route to a friend's house when the collision occurred on Crow Road around midnight. Thomas Ross, KC, defending, told the sentencing that Dixon showed remorse to the author of his background report. The advocate said, "He accepted he is fully deserving of punishment. He found himself in a position that thousands of young men would give their right arm for, to hope to find themselves as a senior professional with 2 of the clubs. He was released from one of them, and then signed by the other. He threw it all away. It's his fault. Mr. Dixon has suffered greatly as a result of his reckless conduct." Dixon's previous convictions include careless driving from December 2022, when he was hit with 3 penalty points. He was also convicted of a domestic offence in April 2023, when he was ordered to do 190 hours of unpaid work. Dixon, who was tipped for first team football, was released by Celtic having scored 2 goals in his first 2 appearances for the B team. And that article was by Connor Gordon. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 17th of February, from the news section, Labour would lower tax burden on Scots workers. This article was written by Stuart Patterson. Anna Sarwar said that the Labour Scottish Government would lower the tax burden on Scottish workers. In his speech yesterday to the party's conference in Glasgow, he hit out at the SNP income tax policy and its handling of the economy. Sarwar accused the SNP of financial mismanagement during a cost of living crisis. He said, "We have the ludicrous situation where we have a government that believes that if you earn £28,500 in this country, you somehow have the broadest shoulders and you should be expected to pay more and get less in return." One possible Scottish Labour income tax proposals. A spokesperson said later, Labour's intention was to lower the tax burden on working people. "We do not support raising tax bands." In a speech lasting just under 1 hour, Sarwar said that a Labour government would strengthen workers' rights and tackle poverty. He said, "Across Scotland today there are 410,000 adults in work poverty. More than 109,000 people in Scotland are on 0 hours contracts. So, we must finally bring the world of work into the 21st century, strengthening workers' rights and strengthening our economy too. Instead of allowing a race to the bottom, we will deliver a race to the top." He said a Labour New Deal for working people will be the centrepiece of Labour's programme for government. He said, "That means ending the scandal of end, fire and rehire, extending employment rights from day one, delivering a real living wage and banning exploitative 0-hour contracts once and for all." Sarwar again called for a ceasefire in Gaza and for the release of Israeli hostages held by Hamas. With protesters expected at the conference this weekend, Sarwar said collective punishment of Palestinians cannot be justified. MPs at Westminster are also due to vote this month on an SNP motion calling for a ceasefire. Sarwar laid out his and Scottish Labour's position on the ongoing war. He said, "The loss of innocent life in Israel and in Gaza is an absolute travesty. On October the 7th, we saw the largest loss of Jewish life in any single day since the Holocaust. It was unimaginable, unforgivable and unjustifiable." He said it was right to show solidarity with the Jewish people and the people of Israel following that. He added, "And as I have been clear, the collective punishment of 2.2 million innocent citizens of Gaza is not, never can be, a justifiable response to the horror inflicted by Hamas. So today I say once again, loudly and clearly, the fighting must stop right now. That means an immediate ceasefire with an end to the rocket fire going into and coming out of Gaza right now. The immediate release of the hostages." In a wide-ranging conference speech, Sarwar also attacked the Tories at Westminster, accusing them of encouraging thuggery on the streets. The leader said, "What do the Tories care about? What do they want to talk about? Sending refugees to Rwanda, encouraging fascist thugs onto the streets, legitimising hatred toward LGBT communities, banning tents for the homeless." Sarwar said growing up in Glasgow shaped his politics. He said, "This city has always stood in solidarity against division, intolerance and injustice." And that article was written by Stuart Patterson and read by me, Ian. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 17th of February, from the news section. Man in court over discovery of suspicious items. This article is unattributed. A man has appeared in court after alleged suspicious items were found at a property in the West End. Shazad Khan, 50, made no plea at Glasgow Sheriff Court yesterday. He was charged with making or possessing an explosive substance under suspicious circumstances, being in possession of a firearm, and a drug offence. He was remanded in custody and committed for further examination. It comes after we reported that the residents had to be evacuated from their homes on Broomhill Drive following the discovery of items during a pre-planned operation. Cops locked down the road between Dumbarton Road and Broomhill Avenue on Thursday afternoon. The road was reopened yesterday morning. An emergency rest centre was set up by the council at Partick Borough Hall for anyone evacuated from their home. And the article was unattributed. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 17th of February, from the news section. Man sentenced over pet claims. This article is unattributed. A man has been sentenced after causing unnecessary suffering to his own pets. William Scott, from East Kilbride, was found guilty of causing unnecessary suffering to his ferrets and snake by failing to provide a suitably safe and clean environment for them to live in. The 61-year-old was sentenced at Hamilton Sheriff Court on Tuesday, January the 30th. He was handed a £400 fine, a £20 victim surcharge, and a 5-year disqualification order from owning and keeping ferrets and snakes. Following an investigation, a Scottish SPCA inspector said, "On August 31st, 2022, we received a call in relation to a property in Elliot Crescent in East Kilbride from a local authority environmental health officer. The caller noted a strong unpleasant smell emanating from the property and a large build-up of flies around the door of the property. They also reported that the ferret hutch was in poor condition and the ferret himself was shaking. We attended the property the same day, and upon emptying the communal garden, we found a ferret within his hutch in extremely poor body condition. He was wobbly on his feet and was visibly shaking. The hutch itself was in very poor condition, with a large build-up of faeces, no bedding, and a lack of all other necessary provisions. 2 water bottles were present, but both were empty. A food bowl with old, congealed, soggy food was present, but it was clearly not fit for consumption. Concerns for the ferret were such that we made the decision to remove him immediately in order to obtain emergency veterinary treatment. The ferret was examined by a veterinary surgeon who confirmed he was in an emaciated body condition and was extremely dehydrated. The ferret required immediate hospitalisation for fluids and rehydration therapy. A veterinary assessment confirmed that the ferret had been caused unnecessary suffering. The ferret remained hospitalised for approximately 48 hours before coming to one of our centres to recover. On gaining entry to the property, the living conditions were of immediate concern. There was a significant build-up of rubbish, household items and dirt and grime throughout. We are pleased that Scott received this ban, but we would have preferred the ban to include all animals and not just ferrets and snakes. If anyone is concerned about the welfare of an animal, they should call our confidential helpline on 03 000 999 999. That's our confidential helpline on 03000 999 999. And that article was unattributed. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 17th of February, from the news section, National Bartender Contest to be held in City. This article is unattributed. Bartenders across the country are being asked to share stories about their drinks, bars and communities in a competition held in Glasgow. Hosted by Hoxton Spirits with the UK Bartenders Guild and In Drinks, the contest will take place on March the 6th and 7th at the SEC with a £1,000 reward. Matthew Doyle, Business Development Manager for Scotland and Northern Ireland at Hoxton Spirits, said, "We are really proud to be launching this competition in partnership with In Drinks and the UK Bartenders Guild. As a brand that has her neighbourhood at heart, we really wanted to allow bartenders to shout about their community through this competition, giving complete freedom in flavour and ingredients to really let that be the core of their drinking message. To participate, bartenders are required to enter their signature serve using the products from the Hoxton Spirit series, with a photo and the story behind their creation. The entry submission deadline is February the 21st. Paula Dixon, Director of Sales for In Drinks, said, "It's a chance for some of the best mixologists and creatives in the hospitality scene to work their magic, creating some fabulous cocktails and really setting the bar for what is considered a good drink. The In Drinks Bartender Contest winner will be awarded a custom hit Scotland scholarship to support the development in the drinks industry." Claudia Carozzi, President of the UK Bartenders Guild, said, "Mixology is a true art form, especially when performed by bartenders with a real passion for creativity, so getting to showcase their skills to the thousands of visitors to the show will be a truly special occasion." And the article was unattributed. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 17th of February, from the news section. On this day in 1405, the Mongol leader Tamerlane the Great died during an expedition to conquer China. 1673, Molière, Jean-Baptiste Poquelin, French dramatist and writer of comedies, died on stage. 1818, Karl Christian Ludwig Drais von Silberbrunn patented the Dracaena, the forerunner of the bicycle. 1883. A Mr. Ashwell of Herne Hill, London, patented the vacant/engaged toilet door sign. 1909. Geronimo, the great Apache leader, died. His real name was Goyathale, which means one who yawns. 1959. The Queen allowed Marlborough House to be used by the government and, as a result, it became the home of the Commonwealth Secretariat and the Commonwealth Foundation. 1972. Volkswagen broke the record held by the Model T Ford by selling the 15 millionth 7,034th production model of the Beetle. 1982. Jazz pianist and composer Thelonious Sphere Monk, instrumental in the development of bebop, died. 1987. A group of Tamils from Sri Lanka seeking asylum in Britain protested at Heathrow Airport by removing their clothes as they were about to be deported. 1992. Serial killer Jeffrey Dahmer, above, was sentenced to life in prison by a court in Wisconsin for murdering and dismembering 15 young men and boys. On this day last year, a team of archaeologists discovered the remains of a lost Sumerian palace in the ancient city of Girsu, Iraq, dating back 4,500 years. Birthdays. Patricia Routledge, actress, 95. Renee Russo, actress, 70. Lou Diamond Phillips, actor, 62. Michael Jordan, retired basketball great, 61. Michael Bay, film director and producer, 59. Dominic Purcell, actor, 54. Denise Richards, actress, 53. Paris Hilton, hotel heiress/TV personality, 43. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 17th of February, from the news section. Toy appeal receives record number of donations. This article is unattributed. An Easterhouse Charities annual toy appeal at Glasgow Fort has received a record number of donations this year. Fair Scotland, a charity focusing on improving the lives of disadvantaged locals, revealed that they collected 3,972 individual gifts, 2,975 selection boxes, and 125 vouchers. In addition to this, the charity also produced 400 food hampers. Fair collected gifts of various sizes and values, and their volunteers were able to deliver them to families across Glasgow in time for Christmas. Stephanie Hampson from Fair Scotland said, "Our partnership with Glasgow Fort is such an important part of our mission to bring joy to children across the city. It's our ambition to make sure that every child we support has a Christmas they deserve." The donations, according to Ms Hampson, were fundamental in helping the charity realise this aim. She added, "We were absolutely blown away by the contributions from the Glasgow community. It meant we could give Christmas gifts to more than 3,000 children, which was particularly heartwarming at a time that we know was very challenging for many." For the third consecutive year, Glasgow Fort backed Fair's toy appeal. Phil Goodman, the centre director, said, 2023 marked the centre's third year supporting Fair's toy appeal, and it has been our best yet. We are extremely proud to assist the initiative, and are thankful that so many of our visitors and colleagues helped to ensure that as many children as possible had a gift to open. Glasgow Fort's backing for Fair extended to delivering multiple training programmes throughout the year, offering work experience opportunities, and hosting regular job fairs. And that article was unattributed. From the Glasgow Times, Saturday the 17th of February, from the news section. Woman hurt in road crash. This article is unattributed. A woman has been rushed to hospital after a crash on a busy road in Glasgow. Emergency crews, including police and ambulance service, raced to Maynard Road in the city's south side after being made aware of a crash between a car and a van on Thursday shortly before 8 p.m. 2 fire trucks were sent to the scene, where firefighters worked to make the area safe. Following the incident, a woman, who was the driver of the car, was taken to hospital for treatment. Meanwhile, the driver of the van, who's a man, has been reported to the Procurator Fiscal. Both vehicles were recovered after the accident. We previously reported that Maynard Road was shut from Pollokshaws Road to Waverley Street during the crash. The road opened shortly after 10 p.m. A spokesperson for the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service said, "We were alerted at 7:59 p.m. on Thursday, February the 15th, to reports of a road traffic collision. Operations Control mobilised 2 fire appliances to the scene, where firefighters worked to make the area safe." Meanwhile, a spokesperson for Police Scotland said, "We received a report of a crash involving a car and a van on Maynard Road, Glasgow, around 7:55 p.m. on Thursday. The female driver of the car was taken to hospital for treatment. The male driver of the van is the subject of a report to the Procurator Fiscal. Recovery of the vehicles was arranged." And the article was unattributed.
Glasgow Times News on Monday the 19th of February. Glasgow man on a mission to make island life easier. An article written by Kirsty Fearick. A Glasgow ice cream man has started to provide groceries from his van to help vulnerable people in his community. Andrew Feeney was inspired by the multi-purpose ice cream vans he saw in the city while growing up, which delivered goods to local people when it became clear that we weren't the only people that didn't have easy and regular shop access. The 40-year-old is now based in the Isle of Skye, driving the van in Kyleakin, and regularly sells food and household items to locals. Andrew said, "There is a wee wife here in the village that has become dependent on the van, and we've made sure that we'll be able to get to her each day. She has message access to ourselves where if she needs something, we can get it for her, or if she needs a run over to the shop, I have a car and can take her over." The van had only operated a handful of times before the shelving inside suffered water damage and one of the plastic ice cream cones was damaged during Storm Isha. Andrew, who is a mechanic, said it's really the last thing we needed after everything to get the van up and running. After setting up a GoFundMe page and sharing the news on his Facebook page, Andrew's Journey, he raised more than £800, more than enough needed to repair the van. He explained that it was the inaccessibility of shops on Skye and the ice cream shop hybrid of his youth in Glasgow that inspired him to establish his business on wheels. He said, "My wife and I had to get a taxi from the island back across to the mainland to get milk, and it was £22 for that. We had the discussion of bringing a Glasgow ice cream van, which is an ice cream and grocery van, to the island. Growing up in Glasgow, we didn't have shops readily available the way they are today, or there just wasn't as much access, and the ice cream vans were a lifeline. I hope that the van becomes a lifeline in the Highlands the way it was in Glasgow over the generations." He added, "In all honesty, I'm a granny's boy. My granny brought me up to not just think of myself, but think of others around me." Andrew, a men's mental health advocate, hopes that the van will eventually also boost people's mental health if they're struggling. He said, "I'm hoping that it becomes a double-ended sword once it becomes established in the community and people know the work that I do with mental health. If people are struggling, then they're going to use the ice cream van not just as a grocery shop, but also that point of contact for someone to speak to on a regular basis." An article written by Kirsty Fearick. Glasgow Times News on Monday the 19th of February. Tenants stuck after Factor rejects vote. An exclusive front-page article written by Esther Tarnay. Multiple Glasgow tenants said they find it impossible to change factors despite a majority vote. Some residents of Pleasance Way in Shawlands are in dispute with their factor, Hacking and Patterson, as they want to switch, but the process is creating difficulties. Following a meeting, the group held a vote via email where they claimed more than 2/3 of the owners decided to make the move. Haris Rashid, who's 29 and organised the vote, said, "We have been dissatisfied for a while because we just feel like the services aren't quite up to scratch. We finally picked a factor and we put that to the residents. We had a meeting beforehand to discuss any queries, and we had a vote. People could submit their opinions via email, and we managed to get over the limit. The deed set out how much we needed, and that was it. We achieved this by email, so it was in writing. Despite this, the factor did not accept the process as adequate and refused to leave. In the deed, it's laid out that an owners' association needs to be set up with a chair and secretary, and this body needs to hold a meeting where they ask residents' opinions. The south side block of flats is made up of more than 200 flats, and many of the owners are not living there, making it difficult to get them all together. The 29-year-old said, "Obviously, getting this many people to come to the one agreed meeting is impossible. We held this meeting and allowed anyone to join. Then we submitted the votes that were submitted to us via email. It was an accurate reflection of what the block wanted." But Hacking and Patterson is not accepting this because they say we weren't selected as proxies, even though it was included in the invitation. We told residents to let us know if they weren't happy about it, but nobody raised any objections. The factor now wants us to go around again and say that we are their proxies. I think they're just trying to come up with any excuses to avoid leaving. They're not recognising the legitimate vote we held. The tiresome process was induced after several complaints from homeowners and tenants said the current factor is slow to respond, expensive, and repairs are insufficient. Councillor Patricia Ferguson, who introduced the Property and Factors Bill to the Scottish Parliament in 2007, said, "It can be difficult for people to change their factor, especially in larger developments or where a lot of properties are rented out. There needs to be rules that people can follow when they want to change their factor, but those rules shouldn't make it as difficult as it often is." A Hacking and Patterson spokesperson said, "Generally, where groups of homeowners share common ownership within a property, the rules for the group allowing them to make formal decisions, including to contract or not with a property factor, are set down within their Deed of Conditions, or where silent, the Tenements Scotland Act of 2004. Where any part of a homeowner group wishes to change their appointed property factor, they follow the rules as laid out and obtain support from their fellow homeowners. Any decision to change the factor is binding and the process completes. Where the rules are not followed or inadequate support is received from the homeowner group, no decision can be deemed to have been taken." An exclusive front-page article written by Esther Tarnay. Glasgow Times, on Monday, the 19th of February. Lifestyle. Fight for the oldest pub in the city is centuries long. An article written by Rebecca Newlands. It seems like every week there's a slick new cocktail bar or homely traditional pub opening in and around Glasgow. Our city definitely has an abundance of choices for a night out, after-work drink, or a catch-up pint with old friends. But among all the new arrivals, the answer to which is the oldest pub in Glasgow is one that is hotly contested. Numerous watering holes in our city have claimed to date the furthest back in time, some going back hundreds of years. One of Glasgow's oldest recently celebrated a milestone 230th birthday in 2022. The Scotia's origins take us all the way back to 1792, when it was called the Scotia Inn and served as a watering hole for the city's maritime trade. Sailors, shipyard workers and the like would be dropping in for a refreshment from the nearby Clyde docks. The pub grew in popularity with those in the arts and cultural circles as the Metropole opened next door in 1906. In fact, one of the Scotia's regulars would have been a fresh-faced Arthur Stanley Jefferson, the son of the Metropole's owner, who started out selling tickets at the box office and then went into comedy under the name Stan Laurel. Famous regulars of the Scotia in later years included Jerry Rafferty and Sir Billy Connolly of the Humblebums, but there have also been some rather unwanted guests turning up at the pub. Ghosts. The Scotia is rumoured to be haunted by a grey lady, a green lady, and the ghost of a manager who hanged himself in the pub cellar. Meanwhile, one of the Scotia's contenders claims to be even older by almost another 200 years. The Old College Bar on High Street, now no longer trading, was famed for its claim to have opened in 1515. Also dubbed Glasgow's oldest public house and used as an ancient staging post, the High Street building's name refers to the city's oldest university, Glasgow University, which was founded in 1451. While it's true that parts of the building date back centuries, it's now generally considered that the actual pub with a licence to serve alcohol dates closer to the 1800s. In fact, it's thought the oldest pub patter was coined at the time to encourage footfall and keep up with the other up-and-coming Victoria-era Glasgow bars. Glasgow City Archives archivist Nerys Tunnicliffe previously told the Glasgow Times, "The question of which pub is Glasgow's oldest is very hotly debated. It's complicated because over time some pubs have changed venue or have even become something else, like a shop or a restaurant, before becoming a pub again. As the names of pubs are rarely given in records, it's also hard to verify any claims." An article written by Rebecca Newlands. Glasgow Times News on Monday, the 19th of February. Out-of-control dog shot dead by police after a horror attack. An article written by Ben Waddell. A dangerously out-of-control dog has been shot dead by police after a horror attack in East Kilbride. Officers say they were called to a report of a large bulldog-type dog attacking a collie dog on Mannering off Alloway Road in the town on Sunday at around 10:25 a.m. Crews then raced to the scene where local police tried to restrain the animal. However, armed police attended the incident and the dog was shot dead. Following the shocking ordeal, 3 people were left with minor injuries. Now, police have said an investigation is underway to establish the breed of the dog, and there will also be a continued police presence in the area. The incident will also be referred to the Police Investigations and Review Commissioner as a firearm was discharged. A spokesperson for Police Scotland said, "At around 10:25 a.m. on Sunday, February the 18th, police were called to a report of a large bulldog-type dog attacking a collie dog on Mannering, East Kilbride. Local officers attended and attempted to restrain the dog, which was dangerously out of control. Armed officers subsequently attended and the dog was shot dead by police. 3 people reported receiving minor injuries during this incident. Inquiries are ongoing to establish the breed of dog, and there will be a continued police presence in the area while inquiries continue. As with any firearm discharge, the circumstances of the incident will be referred to the Police Investigations and Review Commissioner." An article written by Ben Waddell. Glasgow Times News on Monday, the 19th of February. Starmer makes appeal to working-class Scots. An article written by Stuart Patterson. Sir Keir Starmer made a bid to reconnect with working-class voters who left Labour as he attempts to secure victory at the next general election. At the Scottish Labour conference in Glasgow, he said his party has to win in Scotland. Mr Starmer's pitch in the closing speech at the Scottish Event Campus on the final day of the conference was to people in communities where Labour votes were once guaranteed, but who deserted in droves to the SNP. He said, "We know Scotland will judge us, will judge Britain by our actions, not our words. For our argument to convince again, it needs to feel true in the communities that once voted for us, but have found a new political home with the SNP." Mr Starmer is on course to become Prime Minister, with Labour well ahead of the Tories in UK opinion polls. But in Scotland, the contest with the SNP is far closer. The latest Ipsos poll earlier this month had the SNP on 39% and Labour on 32%, with the gap narrowing considerably in the last year in favour of Labour. Mr Starmer said the Labour Party has changed and talked up the link with the party's roots in working-class communities. The UK Labour Party leader said, "I've always said we have to win in Scotland, we have to win in the Red Wall in England, have to win in the working-class communities in the valleys of Wales as well." This project has a purpose. We changed the Labour Party for a reason, to unite working people behind that old partnership. We serve working people as they drive our country forward. Mr Starmer said class was still a huge factor in politics. He said, "People say speaking about class or working people just isn't a strong enough identity anymore. Not when we have to compete with a party which claims they, and only they, can be a vehicle for Scottish national pride." He said others say it's not edgy enough and division is the order of the day to get attention. Mr Starmer said, "But how can you talk about changing inequality or racism or any other structural injustice in this country without an account of class?" As MPs are likely to be asked to vote on an SNP motion calling for an immediate ceasefire in Gaza and protests in Glasgow over the weekend, he set out his position. He said he wanted a return of all the hostages taken on October the 7th, an end to the killing of innocent Palestinians, a huge scaling up of humanitarian relief, and an end to the fighting. Not just now, not just for a pause, but permanently. A ceasefire that lasts, he added. That is what must happen now. The fighting must stop. He added, any ceasefire cannot be one-sided. It must stop all acts of violence on both sides. It must lead to a genuine peace process. He also said there must be no Israeli offensive into Rafah in the south of Gaza, where more than 1 million have fled. Mr Starmer said the offensive threatened on Rafah, the place where 1.5 million people are now cramped together in unimaginable conditions with nowhere else for them to go, cannot become a new theatre of war. That offensive cannot happen. An article written by Stuart Patterson.
From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 20th of February, from the news section. Bus company reveals expansion plans. This article is unattributed. Bus firm McGill's has revealed plans for a huge £7.5 million expansion, including a new Glasgow bus route. The independent travel company will increase its partnership with global travel tech company Flixbus this year with more brand new state-of-the-art long-distance coaches. A total of 19 new Flix coaches featuring a green interior design will come onto the network throughout 2024, bringing its total to more than 40. As well as increasing the frequency of popular routes, a new dedicated Glasgow to Edinburgh service will be introduced. The move will also contribute to the local economy, with 65 new jobs created in the investment. McGill's CEO Ralph Roberts said, "This investment is an indication of how important the partnership with Flixibus has been for us in the last year. Building a relationship with Flix, a global tech leader, to develop a high-quality intercity coach network was a bold decision that has delivered results. Since the partnership launched in 2021, Flixbus and McGill's launched a dedicated Scottish network in the summer of 2022, and then they had a huge expansion in 2023, with more routes in Scotland as well as cross-border services." Andreas Schorling, who is the managing director of Flixbus UK, added, "Our partnership with McGill's will increase frequencies on our most popular routes in Scotland, connecting 7 cities as well as a new dedicated service between Glasgow and Edinburgh." That report was unattributed. From the Glasgow Times, Friday the 20th of February, from the news section. Care home fear for family. Report by Catriona Stewart. Chris Keegan remembers his brother as a small boy wearing a motorcycle helmet to protect his head from constant seizures. Kevin had developed epilepsy as a young child, and the fits would send him falling on the ground at regular intervals, causing him severe injury. He required constant supervision and care from an early age into adulthood, but the situation reached crisis point when Kevin and Chris's parents died. After years living in unsuitable accommodation, the family was delighted when Kevin was assessed by the Scottish Epilepsy Centre and offered a place in a Quarriers home where he could receive round-the-clock care. But now the home, Ashgrove, in Quarriers Village near Bridge of Weir, is one of 3 set to close due to chronic staffing issues, and, once more, the Keegans are fearful for Kevin's future. "I remember my mum would say, I can hardly get a word out of him, because he seemed to be always overdosed due to his medication, Mr. Keegan said. There was no real treatment, and then after my father died in 1982, my mother had him on her own. She died in 1988, and that really left nobody in a position to look after Kevin. We spent a couple of years with the council bouncing him around various places. The family set Kevin up in his own flat and would take it in turns to support him. Mr. Keegan would get him up in the morning, another family member would do the laundry, another would make him dinner. But that only lasted 6 months, the retired police officer added. It was very difficult because if he had a seizure and he was in his own place, then he just collapsed with nobody there. The council might say the flat is safe because it is a pull cord, but if you're having an epileptic seizure, you're not going to pull a pull cord. You're collapsing the floor and you're going nowhere, and basically he could have died just like that. However, Kevin came to live in Ashgrove around 35 years ago, and his life has been transformed into what is one of 3 small care homes in the Quarriers Village, Glen Valley, Fountain View and Ashgrove. All 3 will now close on March the 31st, affecting a total of 17 residents. Kevin has flourished in Ashgill. His medication is carefully monitored and he has round-the-clock care. He also has a degree of independence, be able to go out alone in the village. Mr. Keegan said he was even told that his brother takes part in interview panels for new staff at the home. But new staff is the issue. Quarriers is one of a conglomerate of charities, the Coalition of Care and Support Providers in Scotland, petitioning the Scottish Government for increased funding to pay higher wages and help attract more workers to social care. Low wages and an exodus caused by Brexit have prompted a shortage of skilled care staff. The village's location, in Inverclyde, means that it's difficult to reach without a car, and this has put further pressure on staffing. Dr. Ron Cully, Quarriers CEO, said, Quarriers has announced the difficult decision to close 3 care homes in Quarriers Village. We have faced ongoing difficulties in recruiting the required staff numbers to provide the highest level of care within this care model and geographical location. We are working closely with the relevant local authorities and the families of the people we support to ensure that the suitable alternative accommodation is secured. We offer heartfelt apologies for the disruption this decision will cause to the people we currently support and their families. This decision was made with the utmost consideration for safety, as well as the well-being of those in our care. Individual local authorities are now responsible for finding new homes for the people who have to move from Glen Valley, Fountain View and Ashgrove. A spokesperson for Glasgow City Council said it is working with the Keegans to find alternative accommodation and to make the transition as smooth as possible. Renfrewshire Health and Social Care Partnership, which is also helping to rehouse the residents, said a dedicated project team has been established and is in regular contact with all parties. For the Keegans, this uncertainty, especially after 30 years living in the home, is causing huge anxiety, although they have a sympathy for the predicament Quarriers find itself in. Mr. Keegan said, You can't attract qualified people for £12 an hour. These people have to be qualified, they have to learn a lot. The family is hopeful of finding a suitable place for Kevin soon, but are aghast at having to go through the process again, having believed Kevin would live his life in Quarriers. And that report was by Katrina Stewart. From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 20th of February, from the opinion section. Letter to the editor. Cleverly is clueless. I read in one of the Sunday papers Home Secretary James Cleverly has strongly criticised the SNP for failing to offer enough housing for desperate asylum seekers. I would like to enlighten James Cleverly, as obviously he is totally unaware of the situation in Scotland. We can't offer housing we simply don't have. We don't have enough housing for the people living in Scotland. In Scotland, we can't even provide a change of housing for people who are living in desperate poor housing conditions, and unfortunately have been put on waiting lists that are probably so long now that they have no hope whatsoever of ever being rehoused. I would therefore ask James Cleverly, before making stupid suggestions, to get his information right. E.K. Crookston. There should be legislation that all dogs should be put on a leash in public places, but, sadly, that will never happen, as fox hunting packs need to roam free, Dangerously out of control dog shot dead by cops following horror attack. Elisa Sheeran. Poor dogs. I'm from Germany and can't understand how you treat these dogs in your country. It's always the owner's fault, not the dogs. Sarah Troutman. This kind of attack is becoming all too common. Maybe dogs should be on leads in public places? Diane Waitley. Obviously, it might not be one of the imported XL bullies to Scotland. However, it most likely is. I get the main problem with these breeds and the incidents are that the owners, but nobody is tracking them. Nobody is governing them and nobody is taking responsible action. Mount Calder. And that was the letters to the editor from today, Tuesday the 20th of February's Glasgow Times. From the Glasgow Times, Tuesday the 20th of February, from the news section. Thug who tried to chop off man's finger, caged. Report by James Mulholland. A thug who tried to chop off a man's fingers and threatened to cut out his tongue during a prolonged and vicious attack has been jailed. Paul Berry, 36, detained and assaulted George Lindsay and subjected him to a terrifying ordeal at a flat in Rutherglen, South Lanarkshire on September the 1st, 2022. The High Court in Glasgow heard how during the ordeal, Berry punched and kicked the victim, struck him with knives, burnt him with cigarettes and pinned him to the floor as he tried to sever fingers. At an earlier hearing, Judge Lord Fairley ordered for a full risk assessment to be carried out on Berry, which could have led to an order for a lifelong restriction being imposed on him. People who receive this sentence are only released once the parole board consider them to be no longer pose a risk to public safety. However, Berry reappeared yesterday for sentencing at the High Court in Edinburgh. Lord Fairley told him he was persuaded by a risk assessor not to impose an order for a lifelong restriction on him. Jailing Berry for 8 years, Lord Fairley told him, I am persuaded, but only just, that an order for lifelong restriction is not appropriate in this case. Berry had admitted at an earlier hearing to detaining and assaulting Mr. Lindsay to his severe injury, permanent disfigurement and impairment. The court heard Berry was at a flat in Skye Road with his older brother Richard, 40, when the victim was invited in. But after spending time together, a row broke out which turned violent. Both brothers started punching and kicking the victim. Prosecutor Louise Beattie said the younger brother stripped the victim of his clothes and he was forced onto the floor and his legs and feet were tied with yellow rope. She said, the assault was continued by Paul Berry for what George Lindsay estimated for it to be an hour. Paul Berry told him he could not leave and gave no explanation for the prolonged assault. Lit cigarettes were used to burn the victim on the face and body, and he was repeatedly stricken the body and limbs with a knife. The prosecutor said, Paul Berry then used the knife to attempt to sever Mr. Lindsay's pinky and middle finger of his left hand. The injured man was eventually put in a shower and told to get washed. He was told not to tell anyone of the incident. Paul Berry threatened to cut his tongue out to prevent him giving a statement, said the advocate depute. But police were alerted and arrived to find the brothers and victim still at the property, with blood-stained clothes and shoes in a washing machine. Mr. Lindsay had 48 stitches and 23 staples inserted to injuries sustained in the ordeal. The older brother earlier admitted a restricted assault charge of kicking and punching the victim, which did not involve the use of weapons. He was jailed for 30 months last November. Yesterday, Defence Solicitor Advocate Ian McSporring KC told Lord Fairley that his client understood the implications of his offending. He added, he is entirely realistic. He knows that he has to be punished. Lord Fairley also ordered Berry to be supervised by the authorities for 5 years following his release from custody. He added, this was a prolonged and vicious assault. And that article was by James Mulholland.
This is from the Glasgow Times on the 21st of February 2024 from the news section, and the headline reads, Lots of police spotted on a busy street near Glasgow. This article is by Ben Wardle. 3 people, including 2 teens, have been charged after lots of police were spotted on a busy street near Glasgow. Police say they were called to an alleged disturbance on Scott Drive in Cumbernauld on Tuesday, February 20th, shortly after 1 p.m. Emergency crews then raced to the scene, and two teenage boys, aged 13 and 14, along with a 37-year-old woman, were arrested and charged in connection with the incident. Meanwhile, following it, another 15-year-old boy was also arrested in connection with the alleged disturbance. Reports on social media suggested there was lots of police in the area during the ordeal. Following the incident, cops have said that an investigation into it remains ongoing. A spokesperson for Police Scotland said, around 1:10 p.m. on Tuesday, February 20th, 2024, we were called to reports of a disturbance on Scott Drive, Cumbernauld. Officers attended, and two male youths, aged 13 and 14, and a 37-year-old woman were arrested and charged in connection with the incident. Reports have been submitted to the relevant authorities. A 15-year-old male youth has also been arrested in connection with the incident, and further inquiries are ongoing. This article was by Ben Waddle. This is in the Glasgow Times on the 21st of February 2024 from the news section, and the headline reads, Glasgow family's heartbreak after pet dog attacked. This article is by Ava White. A heartbroken family say they are traumatised after their beloved pet dog was attacked. Mark Lagan had been walking his two dogs, Nemo and Simba, both Shih Tzu Yorkie crosses, in Knightswood on Sunday when the incident took place. He told the Glasgow Times that they were on their way home when a larger dog came out of nowhere and began attacking 3-year-old Nemo. Mark said, this dog came flying through the gate of a house further down the street. It just came from nowhere. I thought it was maybe just going to come over and bark or something, but it just went straight for Nemo and started attacking him. I tried to lift Nemo. I grabbed him by the harness to pull him up and put him under my arm, but the dog had bit into his back. He was pulled back out of my arms. At this point I was just screaming for help, and Nemo was yelping like mad. The dog's owner came out and my two ran away. Once we got back to the house, I saw the damage that had been done. Nemo had blood pouring out of his chest and a big open wound. I phoned the animal hospital straight away. It was traumatic. Nemo was rushed to the University of Glasgow Small Animal Hospital in Bearsden, where he received 12 stitches to the wounds on his chest. He is now back resting at home. Mark explained that the vet told him Nemo was very lucky to have survived. He went on to add that he believes it will be months before Nemo is back to normal. The family has also raised concerns over the long-term impact the attack may have had on him. Mark added, it was a completely unprovoked attack. It might not be a dog next time, which worries me. Before I had a dog, I thought, it's just a pet, but now that I've got Nemo and Simba, I consider them as my family. The vet said he was lucky to survive because of the wounds being on his chest. It will take weeks, if not months, for him to recover. It will be a long time for him to heal and get back to normal. We don't know how he is going to be with other dogs after this. It was horrible. We spent nearly £900 on vet bills so far, but you don't think about the money in the moment. It's just about making sure he's okay. It is understood that this incident has been reported to the dog warden. This article is by Ava White. This is in the Glasgow Times on the 21st of February 2024 from the news section, and the headline reads, Glasgow man disgusted at fly tipping in local cemetery. This article is by Esther Tarnay. A Glasgow man is disgusted that his local cemetery is being used as a fly tipping site. This week, the Glasgow Times is running a series on the upkeep of graveyards in the city. David Montguire, 37, has expressed his outrage at a local dumping ground in Sandymount Cemetery in the east end of the city, where members of his family are laid to rest. He said, there are cooker hoods, cardboard boxes, garden waste, slabs dumped. And as you go further down, there are fridges and piles of car tyres. There isn't so much litter, but people just dump things there. And this is right at the entrance. The Toll Cross resident visits the resting place around once a month and said the issue has been noticeable for around 2 years. He added, "It leaves you disgusted. Fly tipping is a huge issue in Glasgow, but there are locations where people can dispose of items properly. To do it in a cemetery of all places is just disrespectful." The East End local also noticed dog walkers on the grounds, allowing the pets to pee. He said the amount of dog walkers as well that are in this cemetery is absolutely crazy. I know there's no rule against a dog being in a cemetery, but to go in and leave dog waste discarded is atrocious. It's supposed to be a sacred place. There's a park nearby. I have witnessed a dog urinating over a grave as the owner is just walking by. It's not a respectable thing. Owners often just walk away as if they didn't see it. I wouldn't take a dog to a cemetery to walk it. David also claims the general upkeep of the graveyard is not up to standard. He said it's a shambles. There are graves totally sunken down, some are laid flat because they are unstable. It's a health and safety issue. There are headstones knocked over, lying face down on the footpath. You've got to drive around them a little bit. We were told the issue is basically the budget. It's not looked after as good as it should be. I don't know how it doesn't happen. There are other cemeteries in Glasgow you can go to and you will not see any of this sort. Obviously, I am especially interested because I have family buried there, but even if I didn't, a graveyard is supposed to be a place that is respected and looked after. A Glasgow City Council spokesperson said, "Failing to pick up after a dog in your care is blatant antisocial behaviour. Everyone knows you must pick up after your dog, and so we fully share the frustration expressed by the local resident. Dog fouling incidents can be reported to us, and that can help us target resources to deal with the issue. Fly tipping incidents in Sandymount Cemetery are responded to promptly. The maintenance of headstones is a matter for the family who erected the memorial and own the adjacent burial plot. Where owners cannot be identified or contacted, headstones will be laid down for safety reasons." This article was by Esther Tarnay. This is from the Glasgow Times on the 21st of February 2024 from the news section, and the headline reads, "Glasgow School Celebrates After Minibus Donation." This article is by Sandhya Suresh. A secondary school in Glasgow that caters to students with additional learning needs received a minibus from DPD for daily school trips. DPD donated their 80th Sunshine coach to Glasgow's Parkhill Secondary School. The adapted and accessible minibus will be used by the school daily to support students learning outside of the classroom. It will be used for school trips, accessing places like swimming facilities and venues, residential trips and school competitions. DPD's donation is part of their 30-year partnership with Variety, the children's charity. Elaine Kerr, Chief Executive Officer at DPD, said, "DPD has worked with Variety now for 30 years, and we're delighted to continue supporting the amazing work they do. It's a charity very close to all our hearts, which is why we've donated 80 coaches to date. These coaches make an incredible difference, and it gives us all enormous pleasure to hand over the keys to such deserving causes like Parkhill School." This article was by Sandhya Suresh.
That concludes this week's edition of the Glasgow Times podcast. Please remember to subscribe to our channels at View and Review and to tell your friends about our service.